Welcome to a new episode of Box Breakers, the podcast that redefines what's possible. Today, we are confronting a staggering reality. An August 2025 MIT report revealed that 95% of enterprise generative AI pilots yield zero return on invest. We are officially in the so-called AI Slop era, where hype-driven tools are failing to deliver. Joining me today is Alexandra, or in short, Alex. She is the go-to person when defense innovation, hands-on AI, and a sharp creative eye collide. By day, she's an innovation manager at the Bundeswehr Cyber Innovation Hub, turning wild tech ideas into pilots that actually work. And by night and weekends, she's your freelance AI consultant, slicing through generative AI hype to deliver strategies, workshops, and products that stick. She cut her teeth at Axel Springer, which is also where we two met, wrangling newsroom tools and AI workflows that got journalists shipping faster, all while mastering the art of herding complex stakeholders without losing her cool. Colleagues rave about her as curious, no bullshit direct, and the one who adds momentum, and also a dash of humor. When things get stuck, basically the collaborator you wish you'd called sooner. Welcome, Alex. I am so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Meret. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? It's a Berlin winter.
Yeah, it's dark. It's, it's sad. It's Berlin.
That's true. Berlin in winter is not the ideal place to come. So if you're listening to this and you plan to come to Berlin, please do it in the summer. But Alex, for our listeners who do not know what it is that you do, who have no idea, how would you describe what you do to them?
Yeah, so what I do by day is as a senior innovation manager at the Cyber Innovation Hub of the Bundeswehr, which is a mouthful in itself. I usually hunt down emerging technologies and test them in real defense settings so that the Bundeswehr can benefit from the future-ready solutions. So imagine you have technology out there and it can be used in a dual-use setup. So you would take it and then test it for the Bundeswehr, whether it can be then beneficial for the German armed forces as well. That would be what I do on a daily basis. And what I do on the side, which is why I'm here today, is I'm doing basically the same thing. I'm hunting down technology, I'm scouting technology, building prototypes, maybe not coding them myself or vibe coding them maybe, but I give also product advice and how you could set up your AI services and maybe what's more important than recommending tools or recommending ways to work is what not to do. Sometimes you need someone to tell you what not to do rather than just give you one recommendation after another for services, because it feels like upselling to some people. Give you some guardrails, finding the competitive advantage and handing that out to you as a company, as a CEO, a product leader, whomever requires support then with AI services. Or AI ideas in general, maybe. Yeah.
Nice. I like that you said helping you to decide what not to do, especially in a world like today where we have so many possibilities of what to do. And we're basically overwhelmed with the question, what should we do first? What should we do next? What should we have already done yesterday and are not yet doing it? So I really like that. And maybe before we jump right into the topic, because you were also the one who pointed me to that MIT study, maybe we can take a little look at your journey, because you're working at the Cyber Innovation Hub of the Bundeswehr. You and I met at Axel Springer, but you have had several stops before that, and especially also touch points with education. I recently learned, when I looked at your LinkedIn profile, I didn't know that before, that you played a big role in revamping Togolino.de, which is a children's learning platform from Super RTL. Everyone who's not from Germany, it's a children's TV channel, and Togolino.de is an online learning platform for kids from that TV channel. So super interesting. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about how your journey evolved so far, because it isn't what people would say, oh, the standard tech trajectory.
Yeah, so actually, it's quite simple. I loved going to school. I loved visiting school and learning, and that's very boring, right? Because people, you want to hear the story of the entrepreneur. It's not the story of the entrepreneur. I loved going to school. I loved learning about history. I required a second, or I required a topic after the A levels to get into university, right? So I decided to go and study history. And because you don't just study history, you need to have a plan what to do with that, because it's not the typical engineering program or something like medicine or law. So I decided to become a teacher, because this is where people are supposed or must listen to you, right? When you teach them history. And then I did that. I went to university and I learned, I studied history and then English to become one of those teachers who teach children from the age of 12 to the A levels, Lehramt an Gymnasien, as they call it in Germany. And then meanwhile, while I was studying and doing my thing over there, I decided, well, I don't like children that much, and they probably don't like me as much, because they're in puberty. Everything else is more interesting and more important than learning history, and I'm one of the teachers that are not okay with getting sentences like, "Well, I can Google that. Why would I learn that by heart? Or why would I know that?" And so I went out there because I was a very idealistic person myself, because I thought the way how I loved to learn about history, everyone else would do that too. And then you fall really hard, right? You fall really hard when you have the first lessons. You go into school and you find out that no one is interested into that. You were the freak that was interested in, who was interested in history. No one else is in the same club. So you find out that you're the freak. And then you find out changing humans, changing children is a really, really hard job. Changing them into, or igniting this interest into what you love, to make them love that too, is not an easy job. So I started doing my homework with the support of my back then my boyfriend, doing nowadays husband, doing all of my homework in IT basically. So I asked in university, is it okay, rather than writing 25 pages, can I hand in an encyclopedia of this and that? And so I provided access databases very early on, when everyone else was handing in summaries and papers in university. I was lazy, just as every student would be. And so I learned that tech is very interesting because you can change it very fast, in contrast to a person. So that was basically my motivation. Technology is so much faster than humans are, and this was what hooked me onto the tech topic. And this is how I kind of got into it. I started working in that, wrote a website for this person, that person, and eventually I ended up being a working student at Immobilien Scout, and later on doing Togolino portals then for clients.
Super interesting. Thank you for sharing. And was there ever a moment where you realized, hey, my, let's say, non-traditional tech background is actually an asset in how I work?
It is, because it's not, for me, it's not self-understood. Someone who went into engineering or who studied economics, for instance, right? They think only in the product or in the technology. For me, I'm more like a designer, you would think. I'm interested in what the user thinks first, because if they don't understand what you're trying to convey with a service, with what you're trying to build over there, if the user doesn't get it, it's not good. And this is how I approach things usually, because it's not self-understood in this niche, I would say, or in this job description. So you need to understand the user first, what the user requires, and from that point on, you can start building. Yes, technology can also be the first approach towards that, but if they don't understand what you're trying to sell them, you're lost.
Exactly. What again also falls into this description of, I really liked it in the intro, the no bullshit direct. It's the same for the user. The user doesn't want bullshit. The user wants it straight, wants it to be intuitive. So yeah, can really see how that resonates. What I was asking myself though, when it comes to this no bullshit direct, kind of approach, how do you maintain that perspective? Because you've also been working in corporates. As I said, you and me, we both met at Axel Springer, and we know that at corporates, it's often an environment that kind of rewards this sort of corporate speech and playing it safe. So how was that? Did you encounter any moments where that was challenging? Was it a refreshing perspective that you brought in? How was it perceived?
It takes some time when you're from this non-bullshit gang, group, whatever you want to call it, mentality. It takes a while to understand and read through and understand this bullshit lingo. So the typical thing is everything that is short terms, right? So, or you have like, oh, the CMS. Yeah, well, in the beginning, you don't get that it's the content management system, or that the service XYZ, the short form for that. And then eventually you're sitting in a meeting and everything is MFG, like the MFG song of Fantafia in the end. You don't feel like you understand anything, and it takes some time to navigate this world. In the end, it's and then making others understand who are new to the table and new to the discussion is you take the CMS, you look into their faces, and then eventually you see there's nothing, just blank space in between their ears, right? And then you explain what CMS is, because it's not self-understood in many cases. And it's also no shame to not know when you enter a new industry or a new job. CMS might have been a completely different connotation in their previous job or in their university context or whatever. So take the shortened version and explain it to them. And the same thing goes for English. Whenever you speak German and there is a lot of English coming in and a lot of marketing bullshit coming in, explain to them why it is like that. And then eventually, and also this is the rule that I'm trying to stick to, when I see the blank space in between the 2 years, the people zoning out, I'm trying to explain what is happening.
Which I really like, because a lot of people might be too shy to admit that they do not really know what that abbreviation stands for, especially when you're entering into a new context and being aware of the person you're speaking with is I think it's a really, really good thing to do. What I was also thinking is that it creates so much chaos. Having this corporate speech, everyone's talking to each other, and no one really knows what is being said, because what is being said is very different than from what words are actually being spoken.
Sometimes you need to ask. So for me, it's very important if someone says things like, this putting together of words then to a so-called sentence, right? And in the end, no one understood what you're saying. No one understood what the next steps are. So rephrase, ask them, can you help me? What are the next steps to this whatever we're trying to achieve over here, because I didn't get the bottom line, or what's the bottom line. Try to rephrase it, and then eventually they have to drop their pants and respond to the question, because it's not helpful to leave people like with speculation of what are the next steps, or what's the task then at hand, at least from my perspective. And then asking, like, quite frankly, dude, I didn't get it. Tell me again. Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old.
Is that something that in the past stakeholders valued when you were interacting with maybe also like C-level?
My specific C-level did value that to a certain extent. Sometimes I needed to play the game as well. But if it becomes too complex, if it turns too complex in a conversation and they lose you because you don't have the context, you're not usually in the C-level room, let's say, for the sake of the argument, you're not usually in the C-level room and you lack context, then you have to ask the question. I'm sorry, I don't get it. I'm not usually in this context. I don't understand what the next steps with regards to what you previously discussed would be then for this task. Skip the conversation about the bullshit bingo and, what is it that you expect me to do next? Because I don't get it, because I don't have the previous conversation. I haven't participated in the previous conversation. You don't have to make it necessarily uncomfortable for them. Don't make it uncomfortable for them. But then in the end, you need the information, and they value if you usually then ask and tell them if you don't get it. You don't have to tell them, you're bullshitting me. Don't tell them to their faces. Just tell them, I don't get it because I don't have the context. Give me the context and I'll understand.
Yeah. And your ability to your no bullshit approach and your ability to kind of like cut through all the noise that is there, no matter if it's bullshit bingo, if it's buzzwords, if it's corporate speech, or if it's just hyped up terminology that people are throwing around, is exactly what is needed in today's world, I would say. Because today we're talking about AI, and right now we seem to be in this whirlwind of possibilities, tools, features, functions, agents. It's a whirlwind of things. But at the same time, we seem to be hitting a massive wall with this whirlwind, because we had this hype, or we still have the hype. But if we look at the actual data, it tells a different story, because you were the one who actually pointed me to the MIT study that shows that 95% of AI pilots are actually failing to move the needle on the P&L, are actually failing to, yield real return on investment. And let's talk about this a little bit. From your perspective, is this a failure of the tech, of the tools that we have available? Have we overpromised? Or are leaders simply falling for some hype-driven vendor tools that don't really solve real problems?
I like the question because it's very complex. So there is a lot of yes and no in this question hiding. Yes, tools are overhyped. They under-deliver in many cases. I don't want to point fingers towards certain companies because this is not worth doing, because tools also change, right? So even if I say XYZ is not good today, tomorrow it might be, because the next release might be a really good release. So it's not worth like focusing on the tool itself. But one thing that is, I would say, globally for all, or for most of the things that you're trying to achieve with AI, for the sake of slop wording now again, or slop wording 2 nowadays. So everything that you need is data. It's not magic. It doesn't come right out of the air. You need the data in order to do things with it, whatever you're trying to achieve then with it. And if your data is messy, and I'm talking your SharePoint is messy, or your Excel is messy, or whatever you can think of, you're trying to achieve something and you're trying to have the service working, the data has to be already reflecting certain standards, certain quality standards then, in order then to let a machine do the magic around it. If your data is not ready to be then processed by or be automated then by a service who doesn't, have the understanding that you have and the context that you have, it's the typical thing of shit in, shit out. If you shit in and it's really brown, this is what you're going to receive then in the end as well. So the more invest you put and the more brain you put into your data before you hand it over to the AI, and the better your use case and the more defined your use case, the better the results are going to be. But this is nothing that people want to hear because that's work. And that's work that has to be usually done by humans. And the AI Slop treats us or teaches us that companies are trying right now to kind of slow down human interaction to the advantage of involving more automation. I'm happy to automate most of it, right? But you need to have this quality standard beforehand. You need to understand the data beforehand. And this you need to do with the people who provided the data, who kind of structured it and actually sit down and understand the data beforehand. And what companies are doing nowadays is they are just talking about the AI, eventually consolidate and reorganize the company, and then forget that you need these people in order to feed the AI to make more money then eventually. So you still need the people. You just need them to do other things in the future. So you need to repurpose the human in this process, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And
if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. It does make sense. I think it's a very important point that you're making because I see that in day-to-day life, working with different customers and clients, that more and more people are realizing we need to do the data work first before we can actually see any progress with AI. But if we're looking at these numbers again, 95%, which is such a high number, do you think that the 5% that actually succeed, is it because of their data groundwork that they've done? Or is it because they're doing things in a different way? Are they approaching it maybe differently?
So I think it's a mixture of both. First, I haven't looked that deep into to see what the 5% are who are really successful about it. But my assumption would be at this point that it's more engineering led. So they know already what the data is and therefore they know what they can do with that. The other assumption would be that they understand the use case way better. That usually you don't have C-level coming and saying, let's do AI throughout the company, and therefore everything that we do from this point on will be, let's say, automated or whatever. But the 5% that have influence and move the needle, my assumption is that they know exactly what the use case is, and they start this use case based on AI because they know they have the data. So they reverse engineer the whole thing. They start at the end of the process rather than just saying out loud, it has to be AI. Usually nowadays you hear everywhere AI, people don't think about the use case. They just think I need to automate. And then they don't think about the use case. What I'm trying to achieve, to automate, but if you think about what is there, what can I optimize? What's my groundwork that I've already done? And then start with that. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's something that is already automated and you want to make it faster, for instance. Run a better program, run a better algorithm. Could also be. But I haven't looked into the 5% myself.
I like your assumptions, though. To me, what it sounds like is we always talked about the first mover advantage, but now it kind of feels like there might be a second mover advantage right now of companies that kind of waited for the hype to die down a little bit, not make any huge investments up front and actually spend some time observing also why certain AI tools, technologies might not be bringing in the results, and then using those learnings from others, especially when it comes to then the groundwork with cleaning and organizing your data, are using that as kind of like a second mover advantage, and are now the ones that might be winning in the long term. What do you think?
I think it depends. It depends on what your business model is. Let's say you use the first mover advantage to kind of set up the contractual framework. You go and do a partnership with XYZ, and therefore you have already a good setup in terms of how you pay service XYZ. Right, so you know you can use that throughout the company. It won't cost like a fortune to set this up. If you're in the second mover setup, you might lose that advantage. So that would be just one thing, a small thing. The other thing is, yes, you're the first mover. You did your research, you did your thing. It doesn't work. You don't have the guts to try it out first. And the second one said, okay, so if the big players didn't have the guts to do it because of whatever reason, let's try. Let's see if we can like burst the bubble with regards to, I don't know, business use case XYZ. There's nothing more to lose. If Google did the first move and they didn't have success, you can try anything then after that, right? What can happen? What can go wrong other than that Google might approach you and buy your company then in the end? I mean, if Google tried things, let's say, if Google tried things and it didn't work out for them, and you're small and you're lean and you can test things, what is there not to try? Because if you're small and lean, you can move faster and cheaper than they are. So my question would be, why not? Why would companies that are smaller, that have that second, or that go then into the second round to test things, why wouldn't they have a success? Yeah, maybe I'm not thinking about every use case out there, but that's the first thing that came to my mind when I thought about the question.
Makes sense. And speaking of use cases, no matter if you're a first mover or second mover, you said that to kind of go about it as like a reverse engineering approach and think of the use case before you think of the technology. How do you go about that? So when an organization comes to you, they're stuck. They say, "Oh, we've spent a few dollars. We invested in AI. And there are no real gains at the moment. We don't know what to do." How do you go about that? And what is maybe also one of the first hard truths that they need to hear in order to get out of these superficial pilot experiments and actually build AI systems that work?
So first, from my perspective, is transparency. They really need to understand what they are trying to achieve. So to show the flow, whatever they're trying to optimize to go into the use case itself. And then you go in there and you test little things. So let's say you want to automate a specific flow. You test approach A, approach B, approach Z. Good old A/B testing, let's say. And then eventually you try to, if you have success with one of the pilots, then you try to repeat that one, or to have a repetition of the success, to see whether you can have the same success half a year later again. And then eventually you look into, okay, so I automated this thing. I was able to repeat the success of the first pilot, of the second pilot, and it runs smoothly. Now we have something that seems like a working workflow. Repurpose then, take out the human from the loop then from this process, and see whether you can take this learning and then put it into another one. So because right now you're binding resources, you're putting resources into trying all of those little pilots. but you tested that, and then eventually you take out the human in the loop, you automated that successfully, and then you go to the next flow. So I would say test little things first before you try to roll out the whole company then onto one thing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of transparency about the processes, because this is something people. So from my experience, humans, when people in general, right, when there is someone who tells you, we're trying to automate your workflows, Meret. So how you're recording this podcast, we're trying to understand what are your flows. You might come up with the idea that they're trying to get rid of you, right, in a way. But then be very transparent. We're trying to help you automate this process and free time for you so you can do more important things eventually. Maybe a bigger one, maybe a different one, and then help them with understanding what you're trying to achieve also for them as humans, which is very scary.
Yeah, it is. Transparency is a big word. Also, speaking from my perspective as someone who works in change management, there's a lot of transformation, a lot of change happening right now because of automation, because of AI tools that are getting introduced. And there's so much to handle from a human perspective. Also, I liked when you said, hey, we're trying to free up your time, because I've been working with a company recently, and we asked them, what is your end goal with this? What is your vision, or kind of your vision, mission, however you want to call it? What do you want with introducing this tool? And they didn't say, oh, we want more productivity, we want better results, we want these. They said, we want to give back to our employees at least 1 hour per day. We want...
That's very specific. That's good.
It is very specific. And I think it's so beautiful because it really shows their employees exactly what is in for them. Say, we're giving you back 1 hour of your time that you normally spend with repetitive tasks, or just things that do not bring any value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's important because people are afraid. And if you tell them, oh, you will have 1 more hour then to focus on whatever is more important than this, I don't know, report that you're writing every week, let's say. Right? So why not derive that from all of your mails or everything that you did in the background or whatever you can think of in terms of automation? And transparency is hard for humans because then you have to kind of fully commit to what you're doing, actually walk someone through that. And that's something we're not comfortable usually to share because this is our competitive advantage in comparison to other colleagues also as well. So why share everything? I'm a person who likes to share that kind of stuff because I think that everyone can learn even from mistakes. So whenever I'm making a mistake, I'm very openly talking about it because I think everyone else can learn from that, and there's a learning experience in this thing. But not everyone is doing that because they are afraid that this could be to their disadvantage. Yes, of course, it can also be to my own disadvantage, right? So I wrote the wrong email to the wrong person, or I didn't write the email. I waited too long, whatever. But then at least admit, sorry, shit show, won't happen again. By the way, it would have been really nice to tell me that this was a very important stakeholder. So for next time, when it's a very important stakeholder, make me aware of that. I will treat that accordingly and then be more aware of timelines and so on and so forth. Why not? It has to be a conversation. It's not just like putting some guilt on someone. And with processes, it's the same thing. If I feel comfortable sharing the process because I feel this psychological safety then at work, the better.
And thinking about creating this psychological safety, and also, I think everyone probably has heard the perspective or the fear of some employees saying, oh, but I'm making myself obsolete. AI will take my job. Automation will take my job. And I really like this comparison that I shared a LinkedIn post about a topic like this once. And people were in the comments. One person was comparing AI to the beginning of the internet back then, and thinking that, oh, back then we also thought, oh my God, the internet is here. We're gonna lose all of our jobs. But actually, we've created so many more jobs because of it. And the same goes, there was even one person saying, oh, even like the paper press, in German Buchdruck, even that was once a scary thing. People thinking, oh my God, we will lose our jobs. And in fact, it did create more. So this is a narrative that AI enthusiasts like myself are also trying to tell. What do you think about that? Is that a good comparison, or is it maybe even bigger than that? Is bigger than the beginning of the internet?
I think it's bigger than the beginning of the internet. It's more like I don't know if that's the right comparison, but it's the car comparison or the industrialization comparison. So I feel like right now we're horses complaining that we won't drag cars or drag people behind us anymore, and we will be out of jobs just because someone invented a motor to drive faster and to make me obsolete as a horse in this sense. And now you can think of the thumbnail to use for this for this episode. But in the end, it is like horses exist to this point, to this day, have jobs, do things, even if it's sometimes being a salami. But oh no, that wasn't good. But in the end, it is horses have been repurposed. We're not in the sense just working horse anymore, where we can be in challenges, we can do more interesting things than, if you want, like that. And if you compare that to the internet, or to the times when the internet was invented, or let me give you a different example. I had a project in 2017 where I was working on bringing together content from different companies and helping journalists cooperate more easily. In 2017, they were already afraid of being obsolete if they can collaborate more over a platform of content. That was long before AI. So people have always been afraid of being obsolete in the working field eventually. So this is nothing that AI has sparked. I think this is one of those primal fears of being out of a job, out of a purpose, out of a vision. This is nothing that has necessarily to do with technology. This couldn't also be, if this person that has the same job as I have and is better presenting or better at calculating or whatever, I am out of my job. So this is a primal fear that is not necessarily connected to AI in my world. Yes, AI is reinforcing that and is showing that there is the opportunity to automate jobs that are nowadays being done by humans, obviously. But then I would happily learn something new rather than do the same thing over and over again until I retire. Mm-hmm. Or this is at least my perspective. Mm. We're still using cars. Eventually they will fly. Eventually, beforehand, it was horses. So what? Yes, I know it sounds harsh, but in the end, if you learn how to manage AI and how to manage yourself and learn how to learn something new, you'll never be out of a job. In this sense.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, of course, there are different types of people. People like, I think you and me were very alike when it comes to that, when it comes to being excited about learning something new and not wanting to do a repetitive task until we retire. Of course, there are also types of people who would prefer to stay in their comfort zone and to do what they are used to since 10 years and want to do that for the next 40 years as well. What do you say to them? Or are they also touched by this AI hype? Will they be separated from it? Are they going to change? Are they going to just keep resisting?
The ones who resist and who are in this business of working a lot with technology nowadays and want to do the same thing over and over again, they will have a hard time. If you're doing the same thing over and over again and you're working a lot with humans, let's say you're a nurse, I don't see nurses being that fast, like automated in the sense, right? So, but if you're opening every morning the same Excel table and or Access database, and you're just putting numbers in there, and you're doing that every day, and you think that this is what you're going to do up until the end of your working career, I think you will have a hard time adjusting. If you learn to do something about it, learn how to navigate this challenge by learning the ways to automate. Doesn't have to be you automate yourself, but to learn to be smarter around things, then you will have a better way to get out of this situation, at least to my mind. So if we look into this AI disruption that is happening right now, people who are working nowadays with their hands and with people have an easier way to go through this, let's say, AI slop crisis, if you want.
Yeah.
Using bullshit words for that. But those who do the repetitive things all day long in those jobs will have a hard time. Maybe not tomorrow, but in 3 to 4 years, maybe even faster, but the latest will be maybe in 5 years, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. And what I think is it's very important to also take their perspective, because if we see, and this recently came out, was a PwC Hopes and Fears 2025 study that showed that actually top leadership is very convinced of AI, is very convinced of the productivity gains, very convinced of the use cases, and would also forecast more efficiency and more productivity if they think about the next 5 years. But then when we looked at, or when the study from PwC looked at the workforce, it told a completely different story. They said, yes, there were some productivity gains in the beginning. Now they kind of slowed down. And I don't think that in the next 5 years it will accelerate. I think that's it. Why is that?
Because people start then to fall back into, we're not that far off from Christmas, right? The Christmas effect or the New Year's Eve effect, you have this vision about how you're going to look in the next 6 months or what you're going to achieve then in the next 6 months. And then on the 1st of January, McFit is usually crowded, and the 2nd and the 3rd and the 4th of January. And then eventually in March, no one is there anymore. And this is the same effect, I think, with AI. So first, everyone is completely up and about being the first to say AI in their LinkedIn, to name it, to call out all of the tools that we are using. And then eventually you fall back into old habits. You smoke, you eat the chocolate, you don't go exercise. But this is what's gonna happen. The C-level of this world or of this world is gonna introduce service XYZ. And then eventually tell you either you use it or not. And if not, we kind of rewrote your job description to this and that, reskill or find something different to do. So reskilling is going to be a big thing in the future because even if you fall into those old habits after the, let's say, 1st of March, the company is going to force you, or the companies are going to force us to adjust then to the new reality that there is the service that is faster, better, stronger, faster, higher, and than we are as humans eventually. That's why I'm saying I think it's going to come slow because you need to have the setup with regards to contractual setup. You need the setup in terms of data and privacy and so on and so forth. We're in Europe, right? But eventually it's gonna hit. And if you haven't reskilled yourself up until this point, and you don't understand what's the difference between agentic AI and just typing a few words then into ChatGPT, then it's gonna hit you hard. So reskill now. Maybe that's the bottom line. And I'm not saying reskill and become tomorrow the destroyer of worlds or anything. You know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do that. But understand what you can do in your field with AI. It's not that hard.
So where should people start? What should be the first question to ask yourself?
So I would love to do is to try to first come up with a flow for myself. So what are the typical tasks that I'm doing every day? Things that I want to get rid of because they are boring. Remind me of this and that. Do your own reminder lists, and things that you've done beforehand, maybe on paper, you can nowadays maybe do with technology. From that point on, it's going to be easier then to go to the next step and see whether you can completely automate this task. So try to find first typical flows and typical things that are repetition, and see whether you can find a tool that you are comfortable with, or I don't know, go to TikTok, look up or to YouTube and look up tutorials about that, because there are so many out there. So it's already, we're not in the Stone Age. So you can actually look into tutorials how to automate certain workflows. And I would look first into my own workflow of everyday tasks that are repetitive. Don't try to kind of write your thesis with that from the beginning. That's not going to work. Try to kind of understand, when I wake up, I would love to do X, Y, Z, and start from there. And as soon as you have success with the first flow that you automated, repeat that success and try again to find the sweet spot where you also feel comfortable about it. And eventually, it's basically with the companies, the same thing. Transparency, so be honest to yourself what you would want to automate, repetition of the success, and then eventually repurpose yourself to do something more important than for the company. Or for yourself. It doesn't have to be for the company, for yourself. Take the free time that you usually would have required to write down all of your to-do lists, and then take that and exercise or meditate or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the key word here that you said is workflows. Because what I notice is when talking to people about how AI could improve their daily work, how they could automate stuff, especially when people haven't had many touch points with it, they have a really hard time breaking down their workday into workflows. Because you ask them, okay, so what do you do? I'm like, okay, well, I work in accounting at this company, so I do a lot of this and I do a lot of that. But it's too high level, and people do not really understand that in order to work with AI, you need to break it down into like singular workflows. And really, really, really get it down to, okay, I type in this, and then I open this tool, and then I use the file from that tool and put it into this tool. That's actually what you need to break down on the workflows, and not saying, oh, yeah, so I do the accounting with tool XYZ, and then afterwards I communicate it to everyone, and that's kind of what I do on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's not being transparent, and not even to yourself. And that's the same fear that people have even by looking in the mirror. Even if you do it just in your own little, like cupboard, do your thing, to like write down every step, every move that you do. So it's like looking in the mirror and being very also honest to yourself. Even if you don't do it for the job, right? Just for yourself. It requires to be very, very straightforward with yourself. And that's a hard thing to do. It's just like going on the going on the weight and seeing whether it's 70 kilos or 90 kilos or 100 kilos, and then put that up as a goal then to be automated or to get down and not fall into the old habit to do it again as I did it before.
Yeah, definitely. Well, now that we've talked so much about productivity gains, personal productivity gains, or just for general workforce that is working with AI, I'm thinking to myself, especially looking at the data that we have about how many AI pilots at companies are failing, I'm thinking, is a 10% productivity gain per employee really what we're aiming for? Is that really what we should envision? Or do we need to go deeper and really look at deep organizational transformation, really look at our business model, the way we make money, instead of trying to just improve everyone's day?
10% versus what's a percentage that the C-level will be happy with? So if you give them 10%, the 15% are not far away, and next year it's going to be 50% that you want to gain productivity. So whatever number there is, it's going to get bigger, or you need to kind of save down, so it's going to be bigger with regards then to the reverse effect. Then is it that we need to look into the business cases? We need to understand what we're trying to achieve. Is it the productivity gain, or are we trying to be more profitable as a company? If that's what we're trying to achieve, then let's be honest about it, and then let's look into how we can achieve that and not bullshit around the 10% or 15% or 50%. Because there might be a different way. It might not be the productivity that brings us there, but a completely different use case, a completely different business case. And I think people need to, or companies and higher up management need to be very, very straightforward about that. Because it's if you invest then into this productivity gain, and it's not going to bring the ROI that you're envisioning, what do you do next? You put everyone up then to be more productive, and you still don't get to the user because the user is not understanding your product. What do you do then? Productivity is not going to help. More leads are not going to help eventually if they don't convert. So what then? And I think you need support as a company to understand and to be very honest about that. And also, I think I'm quite sure that workers in companies value honesty from management, because it's understandable that they want to earn more money. This is what a company is supposed to do. Is it what we all try to achieve when we are talking about making the world a better place? Probably not. But from an economy or economic point of view, this is what companies do. They are trying to earn money. So let's see whether we can find a better business case if it's not the one that we have at hand right now. So I think being honest is very important about that, from a worker's perspective, but also from a management perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what people need help with, because this brings us back to what I said in the beginning. There's so much noise. There is so much you can do. You can introduce a general tool that improves everyone's day. You can start with little pilots, or let's call it MVPs, in certain functions, and then move that to others. There are so many ways to go about it, so many ways to start. You shared with us the way you like to approach it. Also, probably totally depends on what kind of industry you are in. But people or organizations and C-level, they want to avoid this kind of Kodak moment. So this moment where they themselves noticed that, they should have pivoted. And how do leaders identify that? Because, as I said, we're focusing a lot on, let's introduce, let's say, not that, and I'm not talking about this tool specifically, but let's just use that as a placeholder. Oh, let's introduce Microsoft Copilot because we work with Microsoft, and it's cool because it can help everyone to kind of automate a few things and make everyone's day a little bit better and free up their time. But where do leaders actually need to sit down and think, okay, now that we've improved everyone's day, let's be honest and talk about our business model and where we actually see things that we need to completely transform just because of the speed that things are moving at.
So my first question would be, after you introduced this tool and it made everyone feel better and save up some time, is it what you wanted really to achieve, or is it just that you needed the bullshit bingo word AI then to enter the space of we're trying to get to the next level to change the business case or the business model then for the company? And if that was the original purpose of introducing AI, why starting with something that soft, that doesn't bring any value or not enough value, rather than changing it harshly? Well, because we're humans, a lot of humans want to be like eased into the situation. It's not very comfortable then to kind of change the business model and say, I don't know, I don't need sales anymore. Because this sales tool that the name is XYZ, whatever, automated all of my workflows. So also I don't need sales anymore at all because we're not selling stuff anymore. I don't know, whatever we're doing nowadays, but we're not selling. We will just simply change the business model from day one to from this to that. Why not say it out loud and see whether the company can find use cases around that? And the workers can find use cases around that. Rather than wasting the time of everyone and just, bullshitting through, in this case, Microsoft Copilot, but I'm not against Microsoft Copilot. So, but if that wasn't the outcome that you wished for, why introduce that? Bore everyone with that. Don't give them anything around that, because people want to help. If you ask them for help, they will help. So we're intrinsically, if you're not completely hateful about your company, you want to help the company because it's also the one that pays the rent, right? In a way. And so ask people to help you. Ask when you're in one of those big transformation moments where you think it's not going to work longer, the business model is not going to support us any longer, we need to change something very drastically, say it out loud, and people are going to support that. Is it going to be the very comfortable situation to do that? Probably not, because some ideas might even kill half of the workforce on one end, and the other end is going to be completely disrupted, whatever. But not saying it out loud is going to delay the whole process.
Yeah, totally. And people might also get frustrated if you introduce a tool that helps maybe to a certain little extent, but you promised, we have a big AI transformation, and people are not seeing it, but they also don't get asked. That then frustrates them. So who needs to sit at that table and discuss these topics apart from C-level and apart from technical roles that can actually then realistically tell you what can happen and what cannot happen? But who really needs to sit at that table? And follow up question to that already, because I'm thinking basically everyone. But then again, I'm thinking there need to be people who make the decisions. So what do you think?
I think you can ask everyone. You don't need to invite everyone to the table, but you can ask everyone. There are processes and companies, there are corporate processes and companies that in Germany it's called betriebliches Vorschlagswesen. There's a sexy word for that, right? So you can ask people to support you to find new ideas, new business cases, and take them into consideration. You need the ones who look into all of those ideas and give you context then as management. And you need people who support you. I don't have specific roles to tell you now. So Obviously, you have the C-suite that is going to sit into this thing and give their opinion about this and that. And you will always have consultants that sit in and give you opinions about this and that. In the end, it's the management who takes then the decision, obviously. But what if it's not just the management making the decision, but also like echoing then back into the company and asking, okay, so that was maybe even an idea from one of the workers or from a group or whatever you can think of. Ask the market whether this is something that will bring money back in. So you take this idea, again, you test it, go to a different market and test it. You don't have to test it in your home market where it's like it could be too disruptive and scare off your nowadays user. Go to a different market and test it. I don't know. That could be a thing. And bring along people who had the idea, because that is going to be very, so it rewards them in a way that and acknowledges their brain input that they put into this whole thing. Bring them along, show them that if they have more of those ideas, they are going to be valued then within the company. Don't leave them out. But it doesn't have to be this typical, I need them at the table situation, because this is hard, right? So management wants to be then very often in between themselves or in this little club thing that they build, right? And but you can build strategies around that. So let management be comfortable in their club, but invite the others to participate when it's important. And you don't have to disrupt the market instantly. You can test things outside.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think one big part is also having an entity present, no matter if it's a consultant or if it's someone from your own company, having an entity present that gives you this backbone of security, because we're navigating a quote unquote new space, a new sphere. And especially in countries like Germany, for example, we do have rules and regulations. There are a lot of risks, yes. And in order for them to not cannibalize on your idea and to not sabotage it, have someone present who has your back when it comes to that, who can tell you exactly what to look out for, exactly what to include, like right from the start, and it kind of like shields these risks.
Even if you don't do that in the beginning and you test that, even if you wanna go completely full rogue, you have this idea, let's paint the world black rather than pink, whatever, and you wanna change everything about the product. Then try it, do it, but don't do it in your home market. So you could like test it and see, maybe best outcome would be you gain a new market. Right? So even if regulations in Germany tell you it has to say pink because of, things pink, it's okay. Let's keep it pink. Let's keep it pink with dots. Let's keep it, all of those things that you put then up there. But let's test it in black somewhere else. If it's interesting then to a user group that is similar to our market, let's say, so let's say mindset-wise or, budgetary-wise or whatever you can think of, but let's test the black version as well somewhere else. Why not? Because otherwise you won't find out if pink will lead you to the next unicorn.
Yeah, very true. I've been thinking, because we've talked a lot about big business cases so far, but as you said in the beginning, what you're also passionate about is education. And thinking about the connection between AI and education, right now what I'm seeing are a lot of gimmicks that try to make it fun, try to make it sustainable, but how can we actually use AI tools and technologies to make education even more sustainable, accessible, to just improve it? And what are you seeing right now? What are the the observations in that sphere that you're witnessing right now?
So observation in this sphere is it's growing actually, and it started growing before the AI bubble started to like blow up completely. And I think the reason why this happened is because of COVID. So before AI became big, the COVID bubble led to schools being closed, people being home, children being home. And teachers and schools had to think of alternatives to kind of bring teaching or bring knowledge to children, then things that don't work in Germany as good as somewhere else, for instance. Why? Because in very rural areas, very far away, where you have to like drive like hundreds of kilometers up until you see a school, technology has been integrated into the classrooms way earlier than here in Europe, where everything is so accessible. And so COVID was one of the things that happened that led to more technology in the classrooms, I would say, in digital classrooms, if you want. Being bullshit aware at this point, I think that AI is going to help bring knowledge easier to students in the future. So first, forget about personalization before AI. AI is going to help us to be even more focused on this specific student, because we know if we learned a lot about him or her, about the student, how his learning rate is, what his preference is, because I'm, for instance, a very visual learner. So I will learn differently than my husband does, or maybe you do, because you're more audiophile than visually oriented in that regard. So if I know that I have a student ahead of me or in front of me that is more visually oriented, I will present him in a different way information than with someone who is more inclined to listen to a podcast and get the audio or get the French Revolution in a short version than from a podcast. For me, it's going to be more, blood and heads and everything, people dead in the streets. It's going to be more visual, French Revolution, more interesting. And maybe even with VR, and maybe even with telling or getting the French Revolution told by the royals themselves. Right. So, or my favorite example is I hated physics in school. Why? Because my physics teacher hated me, so I hated him. So physics wasn't a thing for me. So it was a mutual hatred. And so if Albert Einstein himself could have taught me and tell me about how this whole theory had worked, and I would have been able to grasp and understand and visualize atoms and visualize the whole everything around physics, I think I would have done a better job in school with regards to physics. And so I think if we give them the tools to do that with regards to the learning type that they are, students are going to perform better in the long run. Nowadays, it's a lot learning by heart. We all bullshit us that teamwork is very important in school and in work. Why? Because you always have this one person who's doing the homework and everyone else is leeching off them. That's in school the same thing as in work. I mean, let's be honest. And so in the end, it's this one person who's doing the homework and who's preparing the presentation, who has all the knowledge, and the leeches will just, observe. But maybe because presenting is not their forte, and because they are not good in gathering information and structuring it, that doesn't mean that they are stupid. That doesn't mean that they are necessarily just bored or even lazy. It just means that this is not the way to learn for them. It might be a different way to approach the whole problem. And if AI can help me approach that by turning the same curriculum into an audiophile piece and to a visual-oriented piece, or to someone who needs to touch things, more haptic. I don't know how to approach that yet, other than with 3D printers, but we'll get there eventually. And also the oil factor, what's it called in English actually? The ones who are focusing on smells. Let's not touch that yet because I don't think that we're there yet properly. But if you can separate in between the typical learner types and give them different tools to learn, and I'm not talking about Microsoft Copilot, I'm talking about something that is in their curriculum and that will help them based on their learner type to achieve better results. And you can also test that with them. And yes, in the end, everyone has to sit in their A-levels and perform the same test. But the way I memorize things, the way I gain information and give information back might be completely different than you do, for instance. And this is how AI can help. And for that, you still need a teacher in a way, because you still need to guide all of those students through it and to gather the information in the end. But the teacher could like focus rather than just like teach and just read out loud from the book. He could like facilitate and see whether the student is feeling comfortable. Did he switch? Because sometimes you switch from a visual learner to more an feel learner from times to times because you feel more comfortable. You learn that you're not the visual type, you're more the audiophile type. So you need someone to oversee that process in order to like see whether it makes sense to present a new tool then to the student.
Not just thinking about immediate learning success in school, but also thinking school is supposed to prepare you for the working life or the life after school. If school is really achieving that right now is a different discussion point. But this is supposed to be one of its goals. And if the working world is changing with, for example, hey, you don't need to, in a certain job, for example, you don't need to conduct a lot of research by hand and then write really long texts. Why should I then learn this in school if this is already changing at work? So also by using AI technology and using different tools and allowing people to use their preferred learning style, we're also preparing them for this working world where the same shift is happening right now. I don't want to say substitute, but I can kind of balance out my weaknesses at the moment because I'm making use of the right tools. And learning how to do that and learning how to navigate that is probably something that we need to teach students in order to prepare for this working world, because the kind of skills that school is teaching right now is the same that school was teaching when I was in school, when you were in school, when our parents were in school. The curriculum has changed a little bit and the methods have changed a little bit, but the skills, memorizing a lot, being able to analyze a poem, it's still the same.
There's this theory that school teaches us only to be workers and nothing more. But that goes way too far, and it's maybe a different episode.
Yeah.
So yes, you're right. The curriculum hasn't changed a lot. It doesn't give us the opportunity to look into new things, into new technologies. But also, to be fair, not everyone wants to go into tech. So what if I want to be someone who always dreamt of cutting hair, right? So I want to be someone who cuts hair for the rest of their lives. That's absolutely okay and absolutely fine. There should be the opportunity to do that. But you know what's lacking around that? To teach them how to do the taxes around that, to teach them how to be economically smart about it. This is something that we don't teach in school nowadays. We teach them that it's okay to be a hairdresser, which is, but we don't give them the tools to be a good to be a good entrepreneur about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if necessarily AI is going to change that. So this is nothing that we need to think about, how to teach children to have success in the sense of what success means other than just being a worker. To be successful in every aspect of life, which also means you could become an entrepreneur rather than just be a hired gun. And so I think there's a lot of, let's say, improvement opportunities with regards to education nowadays. AI is just one of them.
Time for ponderables. As I've been editing the episode and listening to it again, I've, as always, noted down a few thoughts. Let's start with this one. Alex made a point that stopped me for a bit. She said AI isn't magic, which is true. It doesn't create value out of thin air. It requires something. It requires data, and not just any data, but data that meets a specific quality standard. As she so bluntly put it, shit in, shit out. So it made me think, how many of us are looking at AI right now as sort of a rescue mission for our disorganized processes? Because we often think of innovation as this clean, high-tech leap forward. But Alex reminds us that the foundation of a successful AI strategy is actually quite dirty and deeply human. It's the unglamorous work of cleaning up the messy SharePoint, the disorganized Excel files, and the broken workflows that we've been ignoring for years, if not decades. The irony is, though, that while we use AI to, let's say, reduce human involvement, we actually need humans more than ever to provide the structure, context, and quality standards that the machine can't invent on its own. So the question I'm asking myself is, are we chasing AI because we want to innovate, or because we're hoping it will hide our lack of discipline? If your organization is part of that 95% failure rate that we talked about, it might not be a failure of technology. It might be a refusal to do the human groundwork. Think about your own messy SharePoint for a second. If I right now gave you the most powerful AI tool in the world today, but I told you it could only work with the data exactly as it exists right now on your SharePoint, would you actually want to see the result? Or are you waiting for the technology to become smarter so that you don't have to become cleaner? Alex suggests that the 5% who succeed are the ones who reverse engineer the process. So they don't start with, we need AI. They start with a problem and work backwards to the data. And therefore, I'm asking myself, what if the most innovative thing you can do this week isn't testing a new prompt or buying a new license, but finally sitting down to map out a single messy workflow step by step and deciding what quality looks like before a machine ever touches it? And are you willing to do the human work that makes the machine work possible? And that led me to a metaphor that Alex used that is going to stay with me for a while, because Alex said we are like horses complaining that we won't be needed anymore because someone invented a motor. So horses still exist, but they've been repurposed. And she connected this to a primal fear: losing purpose, losing relevance, or even losing security. If your value is tied to opening the same Excel sheet every day and entering numbers, then yes, the motor might be coming for you. But if we move from being workhorses to something else, who do we become? And Alex suggests that instead of repeating the same task until retirement, we now actually have the chance to repurpose ourselves for more meaningful work. So maybe sit down and think about what part of your daily routine is coursework, is repetitive, is digital, is draining. If you could automate that away and gain 1 extra hour of life every day, what would you do with that hour? Would you have the courage to use it for something meaningful? Or would you just find a new way to stay busy? And finally, let's also talk about a word that gets thrown around a lot in corporate boardrooms. And we talked about it today as well. It gets thrown around a lot, but it is rarely practiced. It's transparency. Alex made a point that really challenged me. She argued that transparency is incredibly hard because it requires true commitment. When we tell employees we are optimizing workflows or increasing efficiency, we are often using corporate lingo to mask the truth. But I shared an example with Alex that she called beautiful, a company whose vision for AI wasn't higher return on invest, but a promise to give every employee back 1 hour per day. And I'm sitting here thinking that we often hide behind vague metrics because they don't hold us accountable. But saying, I want to give you an hour of your life back is specific, it's a promise. And then it made me wonder how many leaders have the courage to be that honest. And on the flip side, how many of us are willing to be transparent about our own kind of secret workflows? Alex pointed out that people often see their messy processes as their only job security because they are afraid that if they reveal exactly how they do what they do, they'll become obsolete. So, a question that I'm sitting with right now is, if you knew, and you truly knew, that the reward for being transparent was an hour of freedom every day, would you have the courage to open your black box? Or are we so attached to our workhorse routines that we rather stay busy than free? And in your own team, are you asking for productivity because it's a safe corporate buzzword? Or are you also willing to make a human commitment to actually give time back? Because as Alex reminds us, the goal of automation isn't just to do more, it's to repurpose ourselves for what actually matters. So before you roll out the next tool or buy the next license, ask yourself, what is the 1 hour promise I am willing to make here? And with that being said, let's go back to the conversation.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, this even before the, let's call it AI hype, even before that, it was a huge discussion point and a topic where there's a lot to unpack, and now there's even more to unpack. But as you said, like, I think we need to keep this for another episode because we can probably go on about this for hours. And we've been going on for a long time, actually. Time flies when you're having fun. Thank you so much for engaging with me. I would say this brings us to the end of another incredibly insightful episode of Box Breakers. Alex, thank you for sharing your experiences and your perspectives. It was truly invaluable. And before we wrap up, I always like to ask my guests if you have any recommendations. And it can be perhaps a book, it can be an article, a concept, a mindset, a question, whatever it is that you think our listeners should explore.
It's more a mindset. Yeah, I thought about that because you, in a way, warned me off, right? So we prep things. So for me, it's a mindset. Don't forget to ask yourself, what if? And to stay curious. Because those are things that are not in books usually. Those are things that when you get like into this 9 till 5 situation where you do all day long the same thing, you don't ask yourself, what if I automate that? What if I could get rid of that? Curiosity and this what if approach is something that helps me to discover new things, because otherwise we're just machines.
I like that. I really like that. Thank you so much. And to our listeners, if Alex's perspectives and her no bullshit approach, which I still really, really like, has inspired you to challenge the status quo or to rethink your AI strategy, please share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. You can find more about Alex on her LinkedIn profile and on the information that we will put below in our show notes. Until then, keep breaking those boxes, and thank you so much for listening.